This young man has defeated his first grandmaster at the age of 9. Now he's 21 and among the top elite chess grandmasters of the world, and he has just won London Chess Classic, a super tournament with a staggering performance, one of the top 10 chess tournament performances of all time, more than 2900. At some point his performance rating was 3050 something. This was a spectacular event. I was following all the games, all the rounds, and let me show you some of the fascinating examples of how Nodirbek Abdusattorov plays chess and how he calculates. But before we start, a couple of words about why he's so strong. I've heard from top players who've worked with Nodirbek that he spends hours every day on challenging calculation exercises, and it shows. And I've recently spoken to Boris Gelfand, vice world champion, top player for 25 plus years, and he told me a story about Jan Nodirbek. Check it out.
I had this camp with Uzbekistan national team in 2018, and then very young boy came, Nodirbek Abdusattorov, and asked me, which book can you recommend me for solving? I gave him 5. He said, yeah, but I solved all of them, yeah? Already, yeah? I think he was 14 at that time. Maybe I'm mistaken, more or less, yeah?
Yeah,
and
he
I
has
had
fantastic calculation.
And you know, he made it his strong point that he elevated him to the best in the world.
So let's go through the games of Nodirbek at this tournament. He at some point won 6 games in a row against very high level opposition. This is unprecedented. I remember Kasparov once was complaining in an interview that I always, like when I was on a winning streak, I could win 5 games in a row but never 6 against strong players. So Nodirbek performed incredibly well, and I will show you how he calculates, at least a glimpse into how his mind works and how he outcalculates his very strong opponent. So round 1, he's playing Gawain Jones, legend of the English chess, and he's playing with the black pieces. Caro-Kann, by the way, I've noticed that top players like playing Caro-Kann recently to get complicated positions, to play Caro-Kann for a win with black, because it's less forcing in many variations than other tries. But this will be a very forcing game because takes. So this is the opening c4. This is the so-called pen-off attack with move transposition, and here a6. A6 is one of the moves, not the main move. But Gawain was prepared for this. So he went bishop c4, and bishop e6 was faced by knight g5. This will be a draw in a couple of moves, you will see. Spoiler alert, this will be a spectacular draw. Gawain Jones knew something. He knew that he has to make a draw against Nodirbek because otherwise Nodirbek is unstoppable. So this game will be at 99% accuracy for both players. And Nodirbek could not have won it because his opponent with white chose a forcing line to force a draw with white. So you can't do anything with black if your opponent wants to do this unless you are prepared to risk it all. And here the line is as follows. Knight takes c3, so the knight is attacking the queen, but white has prepared bishop takes e6, and once the queen is taken, bishop takes f7 is a check, king d7 is the only move, and now bishop e6, and it turns out that yes, black can run with the king to this side of the board, but it's very dangerous. So one sample line is king c7, bishop here check, king b6, rook takes d1, and look at this king, and look at this stupid bishop and rook that is not getting out. So black has an extra queen for I think a couple of pieces, but still the position is so clumsy, black will have to give up material. So instead of doing this, instead of going to c7, black wisely decided to go back to e8, and this was a forced draw, move repetition. So first game draw. Now comes the spectacular winning streak. Let's dive into this. So game 1 against Abhimanyu Mishra. Mishra recently has defeated Kukesh, a very strong. Mishra is a very strong American grandmaster, very young. He holds the record of the youngest chess grandmaster ever. He attained that title at the age of 12. Now he is, I think, 16 and getting stronger and stronger with each year. So Nodirbek goes for the Ruy Lopez, the Spanish opening. We will not delve too deep in the intricacies of the openings because we don't have time for that. We need to cover lots of games. But this is all standard theory. This is one of the main ways for black to play against the Spanish. Bishop b6, a5 is an important move. If you take, seemingly you can take, but it's not working out. If you take with the bishop d5, attacks the knight, and the knight will no longer guard the bishop, and the rook will take. And if you take with the knight, the e5 pawn will fall, and it's not good. So bishop a7, h3, useful move, preventing the bishop from coming to g4. Bishop b7, rook e1. Let me tell you that the preparation of Nodirbek in this game lasted around like move 30, maybe even a bit longer. Very, 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 very good preparation. He spent almost no time on this game. So it castles, bishop e3, takes, and up until that point, up until this point, up until even this point, and up until even this point, and up until even this point, this has all been played already. Mishra probably did not know, but this was the game between Grishuk, by the way, a guest of my podcast, Alexander Grishuk, legendary Russian grandmaster, and Denis Lazovic, if I'm not mistaken. So this was all played between them. This was all played. So this is all so to say theory these days, and Nodirbek knew it all. This is a check, obviously. This bishop will be able to take on d4 probably in future, but queen f4, queen f2 stops this. So for the time being, the bishop is unable to take. Apparently, rook e8 is the move that is closer to equality for black, but now the rook tries to harass those pawns, but white has an advantage. The king is very centralized. This bishop is a monster, preventing this king from ever activating in the near future. Rook takes d5. Well, at least black took a pawn, but g4, and now those pawns are marching, and white is dominating with white's pieces. King e4. You need to centralize your king in endgames, obviously. King h7. Mishra wants to centralize his king, but h4. And here, Nodirbek is just playing. This is not an example of brilliant calculation. This is just an example of brilliant endgame technique. Just playing a brilliant endgame, pushing the pawns. This bishop is not participating in the game. It needs to participate somehow, so now black pushes d5 at least to activate the bishop like this. But king e3, h5, now g5, the pawns are rolling, and the king is too weak for black, and not participating in the game, it's more of a liability than an active participant of the events. Bishop d6 is bad, but already it's hard to advise something for black. After bishop d6, it's a nice example of calculation by Nodirbek, but not too difficult. Like many moves win here, but he finds a flashy bishop e7. The idea is that this opens up the f-file for the rook, and black has to take care, but then this will be a check, winning back the bishop, simplifying the position, and black's king is cut off, the pawns are marching, the king will join the action soon, and black will either be checkmated or will lose because one of the pawns will queen. So c3, trying to go for some counterplay, but white just calmly stops this pawn from advancing. At the same time, this rook is cutting off the king, and the pawns are marching. And here, rook c6 is also a nice finishing touch. And now, king g4, the king wants to go here and push the pawns further. The pawns are pushed, and now rook c7. So black can do nothing. It's mate in 5 according to the engine, h7, and black resigns because king h6 and g7 checkmate will follow. And if black goes rook here, then this will be a checkmate. So amazing game. According to the engine, white played at 98% accuracy. So game 1 was 99% accuracy, game 2 is 98% accuracy. Let me tell you that in none of the games in this event, Nodirbek played below 90%. most of the games he played above 95% accuracy. So game 1, 99, game 2, 98, game 3, 97, game 4, 99%. He played like a machine. 93% game 5, 97% game 6, 97% game 7. And then in the penultimate game, 91%, and the last game, 98%. This is incredible chess played by Nodirbek. So let's continue analyzing his games. Next round, Nodirbek is playing against Michael Adams, and in an interview after this round, he said that Michael is a legendary player. I studied his games when I was learning how to play chess, and of course, Michael Adams is the legend, probably one of the most legendary players to ever have come from England. But Nodirbek is playing like a machine in this event, so you probably already know what is going to happen. So with the black pieces, he goes for the Sicilian defense. We see this Rossolimo, Nizhmedimov-Rossolimo system. Again, we will not concentrate too deep on the opening theory. Here are some exchanges, black blocks, and it seems like there is some pressure by white, but it's not possible to utilize it fully. Bishop d6 is a nice move. The bishop is of course pinned, but there's not a problem here. Black just castles, and white goes for some simplifications. Here there is a lot to calculate, which piece to take. You can take many different ways, and actually all of them are not that bad. But Nodirbek decides to do like this. And already out of the opening, he's a little bit better with black after 13 moves, which is, wow, shows that he's obviously a very well prepared player. He goes rook e8, and now he tries poking and prodding white's position. Some pawns that can be attacked by the queen, b3. b3 actually already is like not the most precise move according to the engine, but people are not engines, let's not judge. Rook b1 is what the engine suggests, but it's such a passive position for the rook. Most humans would play b3 here, I think. But the problem is that now some diagonals become weaker, and you will see how it plays out later in this game. Knight f4. The knight is a nice attacker, putting pressure at the currently d3 is hanging. So rook e3 protects this pawn. Now queen c6, a very subtle move. You will see its purpose later. g3 kicking the knight. Knight drops back. Knight h4. Knight f6. Now on h5, obviously the knight was attacked by the queen, so it had to retreat. Knight f5. It seems that white is achieving something, putting pressure, but rook e6 calmly. And queen here, rook e8, and we have this tension on the e-file. White decides to add another rook to the party. 4 rooks on the same rank, beautiful geometry. Bishop f8, and now there is a trade. And the only move to be equal for white is knight h6 check. And probably if Nodirbek was playing this game with the white pieces, he would have found it, because it requires calculation, but he's great at calculation. So takes, and after this you can give up the c3 pawn, but rook e2, and even queen g4 is also good. So, but this needs to be calculated. Instead of going for this, white decided to go knight h4, but this is already bad. Queen a6 puts pressure on those pawns, and after a4, queen a5. Remember I told you about weakening of the diagonals? This pawn cannot go backwards to protect c3. d4, but now d4 is also weakening. The e4 square is up for grabs for the knight. With each move in this tournament, Nodirbek is outplaying his opponents. None of his opponents in this tournament had a tiniest chance to win against him. He never was worse. He never was in danger. He was just like playing like a machine. Okay, with occasional slips, because he's not a machine, but still, this is so amazing. c4, trying to go for some complications against Nodirbek Abdusattorov. If you think you can out-calculate him, you cannot. He takes. After takes, knight g5, a nice move, retreating move with the knight. Usually retreating moves with the knight are harder to find than forward moves with the knight. And apparently white was banking on queen h5, because the rook is attacked, right, and the knight is attacked. maybe white thought that knight f7 is what black will play, but of course not. Of course not. Nodirbek calculated everything. He went d3, sacrificing the rook. White can take the rook, but then black takes this knight. White decided to take the knight because if white takes the rook, you take the knight, and after, like, let's say rook c1, there is queen d2, and we win. If rook f1, also anything wins. The engine suggests queen c3, like one of the moves, or even queen c5 with the same idea. So yeah, instead of taking the rook, white decided to take the knight, but it's also not good. But at least the queen is controlling the c1 square. But black just takes. I'm sure Nodirbek has calculated this all in advance. Rook c1, and now bishop a3, putting pressure on this rook. And if rook takes, simple calculation exercise for you guys. What happens? Do you see it? Pause the video if you want to find out. 1, 2, 3, queen a1 check, king g2, queen e4 check, and this is the classical right triangle, as they say. Queen h5 instead was the move white chose to attack the rook, but just rook f8. And Michael Adams, the legend of English chess, resigns in just 31 moves with white because he can do nothing. The rook is hanging. Again, if he takes, let me show this on the board, check, and now check again, and the rook is lost. So outcalculated, outplayed by the young Nodirbek. Now another white game, and the previous game was at 98% accuracy, if I'm not mistaken. 99% accuracy. Crazy accuracy score. Now let's take a look at the next game against Nicholas Theodorou. He also has recently defeated Gukesh. Nicholas, I think he will be a 2700 plus rated player. Very strong, very interesting chess he's been showing recently. But Nodirbek is Nodirbek. So you already see where this is headed. So Nodirbek goes for this peculiar variations in the English, where white tries to be very flexible and unpredictable. There is not a lot of theory here, if I'm not mistaken. So here the idea of putting the knight on e2 was to not double your pawns on c3, but black is up in development because black has already castled the king, and white is still in the center, but it's not a big deal. After d6, bishop e2, d3, and now castles. e4, black tries to strike in the center to use the fact that white is still a little bit clumsy in their development. But queen c2, takes, knight e5, attacks the bishop, and white, of course, enjoys the two bishops advantage and does not want to give up the advantage. So bishop e2, knight g6, b3. The other bishop will stand on that diagonal. Bishop g4, again, black insists on trading the bishops, but f3. f3 is a good practical try, and already out of the opening, 15 moves into the game, white is significantly better. Like, Nodirbek has done nothing too special, but he has outplayed his opponent. When I say he's playing like a machine, I'm more impressed even not with just the calculation, but with the accuracy, with the average centi-pawn loss, which is an important piece of data for how strongly you play as opposed to the engine. How many centi-pawns, 100th of a pawn, do you lose on average per move if you are compared with Stockfish? And Nodirbek does not lose too many centi-pawns. In fact, in most of these games, he lost like 4, 5, 7, 8 centi-pawns per move on average. So this is very high accuracy score for a human. Magnus in his best years has played chess sometimes, not always, sometimes with such accuracy, but not recently. I think in this tournament Nodirbek played like I don't know if Magnus had a chance to win against him in such a form. I'm not sure. So bishop e6, e4. This is some kind of a Marot's clamp on black's position. This is what they call it. f4. Now white obviously intends to push the pawn forward, so black sidesteps. Still f5. Now bishop g5 and b5. Black actually plays very, very well in this game and creates lots of chances. This is a very dynamic position. Rook d1. Rook d1 is the only move that maybe has a question mark in this game for white. Computer did not like this choice. Instead, computer insisted on taking here, and then taking here, and then going here. So not taking this pawn, but instead going for the queen and for this strong outpost on d5. But of course, we cannot judge Nodirbek for not being a computer. Rook d1, always a useful move. Knight a4, c5. Now this bishop is open. The knight is not feeling too well, but white can take a pawn. And here, an interesting thing happens. Queen e7 attacks the rook. Rook d1 defends the rook. And here, bishop takes a4 is very logical, doubling the pawns. Here, black is actually better a little bit after h6. But we'll not go into deep analysis. But instead, black goes rook d8, fighting for the d file. Rook d5. Obviously, the knight can take the rook, but then the queen will be hanging. And here, Nicholas decides to be ambitious and goes first h6, and then sacrifices the queen for a rook and a bishop. Which is an interesting decision, because the engine says it's not very good, but it's a double-edged position. When the black knight, at least one of the knights, goes to d4, it will be incredibly strong there. Another one is incredibly strong on e5. It's not clear how white can proceed from here, and it's not clear who's playing for a win. When these guys are playing over the board, they obviously don't see the evil bar, and they don't know that the engine says that this is a bad sacrifice and white is better. But here, Nodirbek starts playing very precisely, which he is prone to do. So take, if we take like this pawn will march. If we take like this, that pawn will march. So black takes like this, but a5. But for this move a5, all other moves give black either equality or even black is better. If white waits, like goes h3, for example, black goes knight here. Now this pawn is stopped. And then black will be able to put the knight here. Another knight will go here probably, and black is much better already. So because of that, white needs to act, push the pawn. Now queen a2, it's good to put your queen or rook behind the passed pawn, usually. Knight d4, bishop d1. Bishop d1 nicely controls the movement of this knight. It's a good rule of thumb. If you have a bishop and you want to control enemy's knight, you need to put the bishop two squares away from the knight, and it will be nicely cutting off knight's movements. Okay, knight b5 is what black chooses, because if you take here, the bishop will be taken. So bishop b3, now knight c3. Peculiar maneuvers with the knight, but looks nice actually. If you don't see the evil bar, why not? Black is enjoying some initiative. And after queen f2, there is a question of whether you go knight d3 or knight g3, or you take this pawn. So Theodoro chose to go knight d3 and go rook d4. But this is the point where, first of all, Theodore doesn't have enough time to calculate everything. And second of all, he's playing Nodirbek Abdusattorov, who is a killer. And just see what happens next. So king f1, the sides are maneuvering. Here, Nodirbek a little bit loses the threat of the game. He's just moving back and forth, not finding a plan. But there is a plan for him. For example, if you take here, I can take here. This is one of the plans. Or you can go queen f2, actually, because if you take here, I forgot, I was analyzing this. This is bad, because if you go here, this happens, and then this is checkmate. So no, of course you cannot take on c5 here. You need to first go queen f2 to prevent rook f4. But you are in future threatening to take on c5 after you go, for example, h3 or something like that. So now knight d3, and this is a final mistake by Nicholas. He should have gone knight g4 or knight c6. Both of those moves were holding the balance, but it's very hard to calculate it all. But knight d3, Nodirbek after the game said in the interview that he calculated this and he knew it was winning because queen d2, rook f4 check, and he just sacrifices the queen. This is what he calculated very quickly, and after a6 he is winning. Of course, there is an opportunity to go knight here to try to stop the pawn with the knight, and if here, then here, and you also stop the pawn. But the problem is that after d6 discovered check, white is completely winning. You can put the bishop on e6, for example, and this king will never see the light of day. This knight has to stay glued to this pawn. These pawns are not advancing because the bishop will just take them on c4 or b3. And white's plan is very easy. White will just march the king forward, take the pawns, and then promote the queen. So that's why knight d5 takes and knight b5 to stop the pawn does not work. Fyodorov decides to do something else. He goes here and here, trying to at least get the endgame with 2 knights for a queen, but this is a check, so he's not in time to take the bishop, and here he tries to go for b3, b2, b1 queen, at least like this, but bishop e8 is very, very, very precise. Now this is a checkmate threatened, and after knight takes f5, bishop f7 seals the deal, because again, this is a checkmate threatened. You can go knight e7, but this will not help you too much. Instead, he checks and resigns. Why is not knight e7 not helping? Well, there are many moves to win, but queen b8 is good enough, just taking this pawn. So yeah, the pawn will get taken and white has an extra queen. Outcalculated, not the most precise game by Nodirbek in this tournament. This is just 93% accuracy, low accuracy by Nodirbek's standards, but still a win is a win. Now let's take a look at the next game, which he played at 97% accuracy against a very strong American Grandmaster, former US champion Sam Shankland, who has been on a roll recently, played a very good World Cup, knocked out Daniel Dubov, for example, another guest of my podcast. And here he faced the Terminator. He faced Nodirbek, and just take a look at this game. This is so beautiful. So this is all, I think, theory in the Scotch game, but some weird line. It's called Potter, Harry Potter, I think, and Romanician variation, according to chess.com's engine. So knight h5 looks peculiar, but the idea is to develop like this for black, and this f4 push is weakening, of course, for white, so it's a double-edged position. Castles, knight d2, and now f5. Knight f3, king h8. It's very useful always when you leave this diagonal open to hide your king in the corner. Takes. There are some simplifications here. And here, Sam is feeling optimistic and confident, and he's playing the best moves. g4, it's the best move according to the engine, but of course a very committal decision to push the pawn in front of your king, even though you gain something. You gain, what you gain is the fact that this knight has to retreat and be passive on the edge of the board. Knights on the rim are notoriously dim, as they say. But just take a look at how Nodirbek turns this around and gets a winning position in just 13 moves from this position. So knight d4, queen d7. This pawn is attacked twice. You need to do something about it. f5, knight e5. Now this e5 square is up for grabs for the knight. Very good square. h3. Again, this was attacked, so 2 times. So the pawn now protects the pawn. Another pawn. Knight f7, maneuvering to put the knight probably on g5. Bishop here, g6. G6 actually is the move that I'm not sure if I would be playing it with confidence, because it's weakening, of course, it's weakening your king, but it's striking at the pawn chain. You need to strike at opponent's pawn chain if it's menacing, and it looks a bit menacing here. So king h2, sidestepping, bishop f6, putting the bishop on this diagonal serving both attacking and defending roles with this bishop. This bishop will play an important role later on, you will see. Knight e6 is a very natural move, attacking the rook. Rook sidesteps, queen e2, takes, and now you will see the Nodirbek magic. Rook e8, hinting at a rook sacrifice, at an exchange sacrifice on e6. Because let me remind you that this king is rather weak and it's cut off, and it's very risky what Sam Shankland is doing here. So rook d1, queen e7, sidestepping for the time being, because if you take here now, there is knight d4, and it's not good enough. So queen e7 for the time being, knight d4 now, knight g5. Offering an exchange of knights, but it's not just that. It's not as simple as that. So he takes, knight b5, bishop h4, and this is the critical position here. One mistake is all it takes to lose against Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Sam Shankland calculated something. He calculated actually a very interesting variation. He calculated rook d4, putting pressure over here. So rook d4 for white. Bishop g3 check is obviously a move that needs to be calculated. You should always calculate forcing moves first, checks, captures, and attacks. So rook d4, bishop g3, king h1 is the only logical move. And now c5, of course, is an attack, needs to be calculated, attacking the rook. And he calculated rook e4, and white seems to have a decent position, because if d5, rook takes e5, bishop takes e5, queen takes e5 check. That's what Sam Shankland calculated, being a very good, very strong, like incredibly strong grandmaster, legendary player, great at calculation. But Nodirbek calculated even better. Let's see what happens. Rook d4. You will see by the from the evil bar that this is already losing for white. And Nodirbek saw this in advance. He told the interviewer this after the game. Bishop g3 check, king h1, c5 attacking the rook, rook e4, and still d5. And it turns out that if white takes, which Sam was banking on, you don't just take back and allow these checks. And of course, if you take back like this, white is winning now. Queen g5, queen e5 check is winning. So if you take, black will not take back. Black will go queen h4. And from afar, Nodirbek saw this. That even though you are down a piece, you are threatening this check. And then some discovered check and mate, probably like this, doesn't matter. So the rook and the bishop and the queen will checkmate black's king. So this is a classic example of deflection. The rook needs to stay on the 4th rank, because otherwise queen h4 will come with deadly consequences. So rook e5 is out of question here, and you have to do something on the 4th rank. You have to stay on the 4th rank, and Sam stays on the 4th rank. He goes rook a4, but it's losing already because d4. Now interception, another classical example of tactics. You intercept with the d pawn, the rook, and now h4 is again up for grabs for white. Queen e4 tries to control this square with the queen, but now queen d7 attacks this knight and prepares a rook sacrifice, an exchange sacrifice here to open up the position and still continue attacking and harassing white's king. c4 has to defend the knight, but now the sacrifice of the rook ensues, and queen h3 is like unstoppable, and it will lead to a mate. Of course, you can go like queen g2, but then bishop f4, for example, attacks the queen, and you will have to give up some material. So after queen e6, queen g2 does not work. Queen f5 also does not work because you have queen c6 check, and it's over. So white goes rook f5, trying to block this diagonal. But now just queen h6, still insisting on attacking the h3 pawn. Queen g2 now tries to hold on, but now, as I told you, bishop f4 is very strong. Discovered attack on the queen. The queen has to go to f1, and now queen c6, and black resigns. This is a check. You cannot do anything about it. You can block, but either way, if you block, I'll take you, and this will be a checkmate in one. Just flawless game by Nodirbek. He just gave his opponent no chance at all, and he played at 97% accuracy. The next game is the last one in his winning streak, and it's also at 97% accuracy, played against a very strong English player, Luke McShane, with the white pieces. And again, we have the Rui Lopez, the Spanish opening. We have this anti-Berlin system. D3 is considered anti-Berlin. There are lots of other lines in the Berlin, very, very rich opening, but we will not go too deep. Here, this is what happened in the opening. White damages black's pawn structure, but in return, black has the 2 bishops advantage. King h8, side steps, probably rook g8 will come and some attack on the g file. This is exactly what happens. G3 just side steps potential attack with bishop h3 and so on. Queen goes here. The queen wants to join the action, to join the attack. Luke is trying to attack Nodirbek. He's trying to do something. He's like, he has just won 5 games in a row. I cannot become the 6th victim. I need to do something. Luke McShane, by the way, I was told by many chess coaches that he's one of the most talented chess players out there. That he got to 2600 by sheer talent, not studying too much. I don't know if that's really the case. I think he has studied probably something, but not as much as some other players. A4, A6. By the way, Nodirbek, I think, is one of the hardest working players out there. You can compare him to Gukesh. Gukesh recently in an interview said that he studies chess at least 6 hours per day when he doesn't have tournaments. When he has tournaments, he has even more hours of chess because there is prep, there is playing. So yeah, that's impressive. Lots of youngsters these days are really serious about their chess training. Bishop d3, bishop g4, knight c4. Taking this bishop, the bishop drops back, knight e3 now puts pressure on that bishop. The position is normal. White is a little bit better, as is usually the case in most openings, but nothing too crazy. Bishop h5, he does not want to give up the bishop just now. Bishop e2. There used to be a pin here, so bishop e2 gets rid of it. Bishop g6 now, and queen c2 defends this pawn from the bishop. Queen c8. I like this move, a very creative maneuver. The queen wants to keep harassing white's king. Bishop d3 now, bishop h5, but there is no longer a pin here. So knight h4, the knight is free to roam. Bishop g6. I don't know why bishop g6, probably because white wants to go to f5 and black is anticipating that. Now bishop c4. Rook g7, rook d1, Nodirbek is centralizing his pieces, always a good idea. Queen h3, potentially hinting at some moves like bishop here and queen takes, bishop here and queen takes h4, because if this file is open, then this knight will not be recaptured. So knight takes on g6. Here, Nodirbek said that he just calculated that he can win a pawn, and he decided to go for it. His calculation was knight takes, h takes g6 is the only logical move here, and now queen b3, forking this and this pawns. So that's what he calculated. The engine says that he needn't have gone for this pawn, but it's not a bad choice. Of course, black can go f takes g6 to not lose the pawn, but then queen b3 nonetheless attacks this pawn, and black's rook is stuck here, and at least in this variation where h takes g6 happens, the rook jointly with the queen can create some threats on the enemy king. So queen b3, rook h7, knight f1 protects this from checkmate, bishop here, and bishop takes f7. Finally, white has grabbed this pawn, calculation worked out, and Nodirbek very technically, very precisely trades the pieces now, trades the queens. He's up a pawn. In this endgame, trades another pair of pieces. He's up a pawn. He has a knight for a bishop. The bishop is not too great for black. It's just like a big pawn, you will see. And white allows this pawn capture because knight d5 comes. Now this is threatened. Bishop c5 happens, but now knight takes c7. He calculates this short tactics very well. Now knight e6 is another idea. Rook f5 prevents that, but now king f1, just calmly maneuvering, taking one of the pawns, rejecting this trade because it's not so good for white. White wants to attack this d6 pawn and take it. b3 first, protecting this pawn. And now h4, another useful move, takes, and knight b5. And now the d6 pawn is hanging and it cannot be saved. Rook d2 is a patient move defending on f2 because it was hanging, but now d6 is falling. Rook here, king g2, not in a rush to take the pawn, not in a rush at all. The knight maneuvers a little bit, again, pressuring two pawns at the same time. And now finally, white will trade another pair of rooks and win the game after knight b6. Black resigned because knight d5 is a fork. Winning the pawn on b4 will be happening after black's rook retreats. So another win, number 6 in a row. And finally, there was this one guy, you might have heard his name, Alireza Firouzja, one of the strongest chess players of our time, very, very talented guy. He could do nothing. He could do nothing to Nodirbek in this form. Nodirbek was, at this point they are playing, Nodirbek has 6 victories in a row. He has 6.5 points out of 7. And Alireza has 4.5 points out of 7. So he has 2 points less than Nodirbek. And to even have a theoretical chance to win this tournament, he needs to defeat Nodirbek in this round. And he has the white pieces, so potentially it's possible. But no, it's not possible. In this game, Nodirbek again played like a machine up until a certain point where he decided to just win the tournament. I will show you how it happened. So we have the Queen's Gambit accepted here, e4, not the most common line, but it exists here, and bishop e6 is the best move. Queen b3 attacks both of those pawns, so you will have to give up one of them. Nodirbek gives up on b7 and goes knight f6. This is all theory, if I'm not mistaken. Now bishop d6, a3, and castles b4, h6. h6, I think, is the new move. Before something else was used to be played. And black has a good position. White is a little bit better, but black wants to push e5 and hold on to this pawn on d4. And yeah, white has some counterplay as well, but nothing too crazy. Bishop b2, e5, rook c1, putting pressure on the c file. This is probably the main source of hope for white in this position, but just rook b6 calmly. And now knight d8. If white trades the queens here, I don't see any world where black is worse here. The engine says black is already better. Like this pawn chain is very, very strong. This is a protected passed pawn. So obviously Alireza doesn't want to trade here. He sidesteps with a check, knight e6, knight here, rook b5. The knight is harassing the rook a little bit, but the rook is well placed here. It's serving the purpose of protecting the e5 pawn. Also, it puts pressure on the b file. Very, very good rook. Knight d2 is the move. Here, Alireza thought for, he had half an hour and he thought for 25, almost 25 minutes. And now he's in time trouble. He has just 8 minutes against 1 hour of Nodirbek because he realizes, I don't see any way forward here in this position. He's thinking. The clock is ticking, and he doesn't know what to do. And the problem is, after this backwards retreating move, he's much worse now. Black can just play king h8 or king h7 and he finds king h8, just sidestepping this pin, and then black can just increase the pressure. For example, go rook b8, a5, or black can go with the knight to f4 and put pressure on the king side. There are lots of different plans for black here. So g3 prevents knight f4, but now knight c5. Knight c5 attacks the queen. Actually, the best plan here would have been just going a5 and pushing on the queen side, but knight c5 is also very, very, very normal move. Here, Nodirbek demonstrates his calculation skills again. He, I think, from this position, spent some time and calculated here, and variations that ensue here. So d3, queen d1, knight takes, queen takes, and knight g5. This is definitely what he calculated from afar. And he decided that black is better, and it's true, because there are some threats like knight h3, knight f3, e4. White's king is not feeling too comfortable in this position, and also Alireza has just 4 minutes. So he goes knight d2, trying to control at least this square, but c6. c6, by the way, is the top engine move, but it's it's the only move that makes sense here in the position, because white is threatening rook takes c7. If bishop takes, then the queen is lost. And if queen takes, then the rook is lost on b5, because the queen is protecting on b5. So c6 is necessary to stop these ideas. And now rook d5 is another idea that you have. Knight e4, rook d5. Top engine moves. Up until this point, Nodirbek is playing almost like a machine. Queen e2. Now check. And queen g4. Very, very precise play by Nodirbek. Now his opponent has just 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds to make it to time control. He has to make 12 moves in 90 seconds to survive in this game. And he goes rook c2, rook f4, another top engine move by Nodirbek. The idea is that the rook is pressuring this knight. And if white does nothing, let's say if white goes I don't know, bishop here, bishop a1, then you can do many things, but you can in particular go check. And if king h1, you can go rook e4, of course, but you can also go queen g6, and then put pressure like here. You can do many things, but of course white is not going bishop a1. White is trying to find a better move, h3, kicking the queen. And now black can do anything to white actually, but black decides to be professional and to force a draw by move repetition, because with the draw Nodirbek clinches the tournament victory already without any risk. Nobody can catch him with 1 round to spare. So it was a professional thing. I think his coach before the game told him, if you can force a draw, do it. Just avoid the risk. You don't have to risk anything. You already showed that you are an incredible chess player in this event, crushed everyone. Just make a draw with Alireza. Don't leave him any theoretical chance to win this tournament. But so this is exactly what happened. Check, and white has to repeat the moves, because king h1 or king g1 is impossible, because queen takes on h3. The king has to stay guarding h3, so king here is the only move. But now again check, and this is a draw, and this is a move repetition, and they made a draw, threefold repetition. But of course this was not forced. After h3, black could just have gone queen g6, and black is much better. For example, one of the variations is knight takes, rook takes, bishop e5. Apparently everything is hanging, but it's not a problem. Knight h4 check is the move, and now rook e4 is the move. This is a double attack. And the engine says that you can pretty much do nothing but give up the queen here. Takes. But yeah, it's not looking good. Honestly, I think there is a high chance that black wins this. There is a very small chance that there is a draw in this position. White's king is too weak, and black has a queen for a rook and a bishop and a pawn, but those pawns are not good. So he could have played on, but he decided to make a draw. And in the last game, he also made a draw from a position of strength. He could have tried to go for some records, trying to win all the games in a row, but he didn't, and still he gave us a lot of food for thought. And for me personally, the main takeaway is that I need to work more on my chess and on my calculation exercises. I need to spend, of course, my schedule is much more packed than the schedule of young chess players who have all the time in the world to just work on their chess because they're professionals, and I'm not. I have lots of other things, but of course, I think these are all excuses, and I have to work at least 1 or 2 hours per day on my calculation, because I'm good in calculation for my level. I can outcalculate masters, international masters, but I need to be able to outcalculate the best of them. to utilize my calculation skills to their utmost. And for that, of course, I need to train. And let this be the key takeaway of this video for you guys as well. Work on your chess and the results will come just like they came in case of Nodirbek Abdusattorov. See you in the next one.